Greetings everyone, I hope you're well and having a great day. I'm Donovan. Welcome to Burnout and Brake Stuff. This week's Chrysler Product Variety Show will be asking the question about compression tests. Compression tests by the service manual are done with the engine at operating temperature, all the spark plugs removed, and the carburetor held wide open throttle. And I've been curious about what's the difference between a cold compression check and a hot compression check. You know, keeping the hot side hot and the cold side cold, as someone once advertised. So that's what we're up to today, is asking that question and following through to see what the results are. You know, compression tests are important to where you want to check an engine and you don't want your valves to look like this one. Your valves to look like this one. Because if that's the case, it's going to blow zero every time, regardless of keeping the hot side hot or the cold side cold. All right, let's go ahead and go out to our test vehicle and check it out. Let's find out the results. Thanks for stopping by. With our test rig set up here, our 1968 D100 318, our ambient air temperature currently is 50 degrees, and we'll go ahead and start with cold with carburetor closed, one plug out only, number one compression. We'll hold the choke open with the screwdriver, but all the rest of the spark plugs we'll keep in, and we'll see what happens here. Looks like it hit 120 and then slowed down to, looks like about 100, 110. Let's try it again. Interesting, it just keeps falling. Let's see what we get this time. So it looks like it snaps up to 120 and then 110, and for some reason it's must have a leak in my hose, so we'll just call it 110. Okay. Our next test will be cold with carb open, number one plug out only with the carb open. So let's go ahead and flip our springs on our carburetor to hold it wide open. Okay, test number 2. Cold with carb held wide open. Let's give her a go. Okay, it snaps up there to 120 and then down to 110, so I'll just call it 110. Okay, cold with carb open and all plugs out. Okay, test number 3, we have cold, carbs held wide open throttle, and all the spark plugs are out. So let's see what happens now when we have no resistance from the other cylinders to slow down the cranking cycles here. Yep, slapped up over, looked like 125 there. So I just dropped down immediately to 110, so we'll just leave it at 110. Okay, our next test, we'll go ahead and do all of our cylinders now with all the plugs out. We have number 1 at 110. We'll go ahead and move it over to number 3. All right, that one in there. Okay, number 3. Okay, got up there to 150 and then down to 140, so we'll call it 140. Release that. Yes, I'm wondering if this engine is another one of
junk car racing's potential engines here. Pull it out of here and put a set of headers on it and put it in a car and nitrous it and see what happens. Okay, number 5. Yeah, it slapped up there to 160. I'll just call it 150. Go down to number 7. Yeah, it can, lots of fun potential with some old junk engines. If they hold decent oil pressure and they have okay compression, well, we'll use nitrous oxide to make compression. How about that? Okay. There we go. Number 7. Got up there to 150 for just a moment, then dropped down to 130. We'll just call it 130. Okay, let's go to the other side. Okay, cylinder number 2. Call that 120. Okay, cylinder number 4. Get her going. All right, lots of fun. Thanks for bearing with me as I walk through the procedure. Okay, number 4. Hit 130 for a moment, drop down to 120. We'll call it 120. Move on to number 6. And then once we're done with this, we'll install all the plugs, run it up to operating temperature, and repeat the process so we can see what the difference is, if any, between cold and hot compression. Okay, number 6. Well, it looked like it hit 130 for a moment and then dropped down to 110. We'll call it 110. Okay. Number 8, last in line. Come on, fella. Help me out. A little cooperation. Okay, this guy doesn't want to cooperate here. Where are you? Okay. There we go. Appreciate the cooperation. There we go. Okay. There we go. Number 8. Okay, I'll call that 110. So, service manual is generally in the minimum compression being 100 psi and no more than something like 40 pounds difference between cylinders or something or other like that. So anyway, let's go ahead and put the plugs back in it and get it up to operating temperature and repeat the process. With our spark plugs all returned to service, our ignition wires installed, our fueling system here with some fuel, we'll go ahead and use our squirt bottle and top up our carburetor here, 1406 Carter Weber brought carburetor, and see if we, oh yeah, squirting. Let's see if it'll light off. Okay. There it goes. charging system is working. There we go. Starting to run on all 8 now. So we got good oil pressure and our alternator is alternating. Now we just have to get it warmed up, sit here and wait. Good times. Hard to believe this old machine still goes. Most people would look at it and go, no way, that thing doesn't run. Seems to run pretty well from my experience. Just a temporary storage shed for the 318 and the 727. I'll have to go ahead and probably part the rest of this machine out. Get parts on to folks who could use them. Oh yeah, look at that. Smooth. Like a sewing machine. Singer would be proud. Yeah. Okay, well, let's let her warm up and check back in. We'll get the plugs back out of it once we get it up to operating temperature and complete our compression check. We're up to operating temperature. I have the cap off the radiator and the thermostat has opened. Watch the coolant level drop down and start to flow. So since we're up to operating temperature, let's go ahead and shut it down, get our spark plugs out, and continue on with our test. It's one smooth running old 318. Next up, our final test here. Engine's up to operating temperature, thermostat is open, all the plugs are out. Our carburetor is held at wide open throttle with our spring here. Let's go ahead and hit our tests. Okay, look at that. It continues to climb with the heat instead of loss. Makes sense. Everything's expanded in there. We'll call that 130. On to number 4. Yes, I was just curious to see what kind of difference, if any, was really made. Now we're finding out. Test data, right? Okay. Number 3. Climbs right up there to 140. Okay. Number 5. Okay. There we go. Number 5. $150. Number 5 stayed the same. Yeah, interesting. With number 7 here. $150. Okay, on to the other side. Number 2. $150. Yeah, looks like we have a difference, which would make sense. With all the metal warm, hot, and all those things expanded, rings, get the valve seats and valves nice and warm. Definitely see a difference in the way it hits the tester here. Let's go number 4. Looks like 145. On to number 6. So number 6, let's get her did. It's like 130. And cold, that one was 110. Number 8, if we can get it to cooperate. For some reason this one didn't want to go in here last time as well. Apologize for the boredom. But there's scientific data here. It's not always exciting. So there we go. $150. So that's concludes that part of it. We'll have to review the results. With everything normal back up, all our plugs are in, wires are down, springs are returned to the carburetor so it's shut. Let's go ahead, our fuel system's disconnected. Let's go ahead and run our carburetor dry. Sure does run good. We'll let that fuel system run out and head back to the shop, check our results.
Well, I hope you found the testing interesting. I know that I did to a certain degree. Found some answers, and then of course with those answers comes more questions, things to think about in the future. But what I recognized is there was no difference between the engine being cold with the carburetor closed, you know, with just one plug out or all the plugs out. Still made 110 PSI, cylinder number 1. So that's that part of it. I found it interesting about how when the engine was cold, it just really didn't punch the compression gauge, and then the compression gauge would leak out quickly. I thought that was interesting. And in the end, basically it averages out about 18 PSI more compression hot than cold. So it's obvious there's a difference between hot testing and cold testing. You might want to ask yourself as well, who cares and why would you do any of this anyway? Well, the reason that I did it was, one, I needed to check the compression on that engine. I know that it runs well, I know that it has good oil pressure, and I'm planning what to do with it in the future. Another reason that I did the hot to cold is I don't like being burned, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so I have not compression tested this 440 in this duster, and I'll show you my concern about being burned. The driver's side spark plugs are pretty readily available, but let's take a look at the passenger side spark plugs. So here we can't see our plugs, but here's number 6. Number 4 is right here, 4 and 2. So in order for me to get to those plugs, the front 2, I have to reach under the alternator and around. So that's not really going to be a lot of fun trying to get to those. So I was just curious, as long as they're not blowing 0, obviously, I can tell that just in the way the engine runs, but it has a dead cylinder. So that's what I'm confronted with. As long as I know a difference between hot and cold being approximately 20 psi, I can go back to this engine, check it cold, then run it and check all the ones that I can easily access that are hot, and it doesn't matter whether the other plugs are in the cylinder heads or not. That's what I was after. So it's kind of one of those deals where I got two jobs done through one process. So I appreciate everyone stopping by, checking out what's going on. I like the objective comments, the subscriptions, the likes. Hopefully I can make enough interesting content that's relevant to folks. Maybe I can get to 1,000 subscribers by my 1-year anniversary mark. We'll see how that goes. All right, thank you very much for stopping by. And remember, the most important thing is that you have a great day. Find some happiness in what you're doing. That's what's most important. So once again, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a great day.